Leading our bulletin this hour, U.S. President Joe Biden has announced a new set of sanctions on Iran following its unprecedented attack on Israel over the weekend. The sanctions are focused on Iran's drone manufacturers and steel industry. The U.S. says it's aiming to cut Tehran off for producing more drones like the ones used in the aerial assault on Israel. SABC correspondent Nick Harper is in Washington and joins us now with the very latest. Nick, run us through the details of these latest sanctions.
Well, we knew that these were coming. We heard from the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Tuesday signalling that these were coming in the days ahead. And now President Biden has confirmed that he's been working in coordination with other G7 countries to put this new sanctions package together. He says that it'll be targeting leaders and entities that are connected with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, also Iran's defense ministry, all of it aimed at its missile and drone program. From the US perspective, they've targeted in particular 16 people and 2 entities that they say have been associated with Iran's drone program or have been associated with other companies that are helping to build parts, all part of the manufacturing of that drone program. But they're also targeting the steel industry and 3 companies that are connected with an Iranian automaker. The thinking behind that is to try and limit exports from Iran, exports that could help to generate revenue that could then be pumped into the drone program. So they're trying to cut off revenue streams as well. All of this trying to really limit Iran's ability to get its hands on drones or make drones over the coming weeks. Of course, following the weekend attack when we saw hundreds of unmanned drones and missiles fired by Tehran towards Israel. Most of them were intercepted. But the US now saying this is the way forward that they want to go, leveraging as much as they can with these sanctions and these blacklists against various entities and individuals inside Iran.
Now, Nick, you mentioned that these sanctions are done in coordination with other countries. Who else is involved?
Well, this announcement came at the same time as one from the United Kingdom. We heard that they were in particular going after Iran's foreign ministry. They've put sanctions in place on 13 people and various entities. They say that that adds to a list of 400 sanctions that have already been put in place. The question is now who else joins? We know that President Biden has been speaking in phone calls over the last few days to other G7 countries to try and get them on board as well. There's a possibility that the Canadians may join as part of this, and also the European Union. On top of this, we also have the foreign ministers of those G7 countries meeting at the moment on the island of Capri in Italy. There is the possibility out the back of those meetings that we might see more of a concerted effort from the other countries to coordinate with extra sanctions being placed on Iran.
Now, as it stands, Iran is already heavily sanctioned. So the big question is, will the latest measures actually work?
Well, that's unclear, and the Biden administration makes clear that they have put sanctions on a whole range of entities, not just on Iran itself, but also Iranian proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, also the Houthis in Yemen. And let's not forget that they put very similar sanctions on Iran's drone program back in October, and yet it seems that what we saw this weekend with that unprecedented attack on Israel, it seems that Tehran has been able to circumvent those sanctions in recent months to be able to stockpile drones that they were then able to use in this attack. The Biden administration says that these latest set of sanctions will prevent them from being able to replenish those stockpiles, but really there is that concern or fear that there might still be ways for the Iranians to get around this, these sanctions perhaps not working in the way that the Biden administration wants them to.
Now, Israel is still threatening to strike Iran in response to that weekend attack. Is there a feeling perhaps that these sanctions may help to prevent Israeli attack?
Well, that's the hope. From the Biden administration's point of view, we know that the Israeli War Cabinet have met several times since that attack over the weekend. We also know that President Biden, in a phone call to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said that the US would not be directly involved in any retaliatory attack on Iran, very much urging a diplomatic rather than a military route to try and solve this latest crisis. But we are hearing from the Israelis that they have come up with plans of perhaps some sort of limited strike. And yet throughout this week, we've seen various world leaders, including the US, really trying to push the Israelis not to carry out a military strike. And this set of sanctions, which had been signalled throughout the course of this week, really is a way for the US to say to Israel, look, there's another route to go. We can go the economic route, the sanctions route, rather than taking military action. So we don't know whether this will work, but it is a large set of sanctions, a big sanction package carried out in conjunction with other countries. The hope being, from Washington's point of view, that this will stop Israel going ahead with that planned retaliatory attack on Iran, an attack that could prompt retaliation from Tehran and, of course, escalate this conflict even further.
Nick, thank you very much for your reportage. That was Nick Harper, SABC News correspondent, just giving us a breakdown following the sanctions that were slapped on Iran.